Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we are going to discuss about the accounts payable interview questions. Okay, so to start with, let us see what are the modules that interacted with the Oracle payables. Basically, you'll have general ledger module, purchasing module, AOL, cash management assets. Apart from this, you'll have receivable module also get interacted with the AP module whenever you have a refund kind of a scenario, and a project costing kind of a module. Get connected to the Oracle payables module. So, how does the information from the payables process flows actually? Start with the financial options, then drive down from payables to the supply and site and then invoice, and finally you'll have the distribution and the schedule of payment. What is the distribution set and what are the types of distribution set? So there could be full and there are two types of basically distribution set. So let us try to understand. Distribution set is basically to automatically distribute the invoice amount to various GL code combination details. There could be two types of distribution set. One is full scale distribution set and a skeleton distribution set. Okay, so whenever we have a full scale distribution distribution set, it means we know the exact percentage and amount, exact account code combination. The sum of the distribution percentage must be equal to 100 or 0. Where in skeleton we don't know the percentage, but we know the GL account code combination, so percentage should not be entered here. Okay, perfect. What are the types of invoice normally you have into the payables? Basically, there will be standard invoice type. You'll have credit memo, debit memo, mixed up, invoices, prepayment invoices, expenses report, withholding tax. Then you'll have PO default, quick match, and retainers, invoices. What are the encumbrance options for accounts payable? How they are being used actually? So encumbrance is nothing but you can have budgetary control defined for those kind of a accounting code combination, particularly for whatever the code combination, and you can select how much budget. So in terms of encumbrance, it reserves the particular amount out of the budget of amount actually. So requisition encumbrance and PO encumbrance are available in the financial options, and you'll have encumbrance used to reserve the funds at the time of raising the requisitions or creating of a PO. What are the different types of supplier sites? Basically, you'll have pay, you have primary pay, you have RFQ, purchasing, and the procurement card. What are the types of accounting method? You'll have accrual method. You'll have cash accounting method. So there will be two type of accounting methods are available. What are like automatic offset method? There'll be three types of automatic offset methods are available in the system. One is none. Second is balancing, and third is at the account. So it all depends upon the business scenario. You can configure the system accordingly as per your requirement. Okay. What do you mean by pay group? Pay group is to group your invoices into supplier category for payments. How do you create interest invoice? So in payable options under the interest tab, allow interest invoice. Enable this option if you want to allow payables to calculate your interest for the overdue invoices, and create invoice interest invoices for the selected suppliers. Payables automatically create those interest invoices. For the overdue invoices in a payment batch or with a quick payment. If you pay an overdue invoice using a manual payment, payables warns you that that's interest is due on the invoices and you should pay the invoices in a batch or with a quick payment. What is GL date basis and prepayment settlement date actually? So let us try to understand the date you want payables to use for the default accounting date for the invoice during the invoice entry. So invoice date you enter during the invoice entry. System date, current date for your payable system, the date you enter the invoice. Goods received date and invoice date. This date particularly you enter the date goods received field. If no value entered, then the invoice date should be used. Similarly, again, you'll have goods receipt or the system date, the date which you enter as the date goods receipt field. If no value, then the system dates can be used. Prepayment settlement days, number of days you want payables to add to the system date to calculate the default settlement date for the prepayment. Payables, prevents you from the applying the prepayment of an invoice to the settlement date. What are the levels of tax calculations? Level at which the tax has to be calculated. Levels more of like it's the line level or header level, tax code level. You can do the tax calculation. What is additional pay through dates? The days specified in the column is added to the system date is to select the invoice for payment which has the maturity date falling within these days. What are terms date basis and pay date basis? The term date basis is basically the date from which the due date will be calculated based upon the payment term. Pay date basis is basically the selection criteria of invoice based upon the due date and on the scheduled discount date actually. What are the types of payment terms? By default, Oracle provides you the immediate, the 30 days fixed due date install. So all sort of payment terms that Oracle provides you in the system. What are the holds in payables and how they are defined actually? So basically, you'll have two types of holds. One is your manual hold, the other one is your system hold. Okay. Restriction on the invoice for further processing. Basically, that's the reason you are being used as those holds. User can define any type of holds and can be attached to the invoice for to stop for the processing of the invoices. How do you create a foreign currency invoice and a foreign currency payment? So any invoices, that has been created from other than the functional currency that will be treated as function, foreign currency invoice. The steps would be, in the payables option in the currency tab, we have to enable the multiple currency. Making foreign currency payment in the payment format enable payment currency option, and in bank enable multiple currency payments under payable options tab. So what are the expenses report and expenses report template? So basically, expenses report is more of like the expenses report is more of like a invoice which is being created out of expenses, um, all sort of expenses inputs provided by employee. Template is nothing but expense report template is a designated setup kind of a area where we need to provide those kind of setup related information as far as the expenses report template is concerned. So both are different. Invoice created for the expenses made by the employee. Expense report, you have to define the default values for the expenses item, and you can choose those items from the list of values while having those entering your expenses reports. What do you mean by recurring, invoices? Feature that lets you create invoices for an expenses that occurs, regularly and is not usually invoiced. Monthly rents, lease payment are example of those, recurring payments. So, what are the prerequisites for entering a standard invoice? You need to have a supplier side, payment term, and payment method. Then you'll have a distribution set, which is optional. What are tax recovery rules? Let us see. Rules defined in the amount of taxes that has to be recorded, which is usually a function of the nature or intended use of the taxable item. What are payment formats and payable documents? Formats in which the stationery has to be built, that is where the attributes of the content has to be placed, payment document. It is actual negotiable or the legal document presented to the supplier. What are the types of payment method? Basically, you'll have four types: check, electronic, wire, clearing, and future dated. Two places where you can assign this payment method is more of like in the financial option and the supplier level payment payables tab. You can, however, you can able to override this option at the supplier side level. What are the different types of payment methods? Basically, you'll have manual, quick, and refund. What are the different types of taxes being used in payables? So you'll have sales and use taxes, you'll have offset taxes, you'll have user defined and withholding taxes. What is the future dated payment method? So payment of invoice where the due date falls in future, X bill of exchange steps enable future date of use for the future dated payment tab in the payables document. How do you control accounting periods in payables setup? You have to go down to the accounting AP accounting periods. There is no option of toggling between various status. You'll have different statuses of the for the period in payables. It is more of like the never open, future open, closed, and permanently closed. Programs, let us see the payment programs. You'll have three types of payment programs runs in a batch payment, particularly the bill payment program, format payment program, and separate remittance program. Okay, so the bill payment program, it groups the invoices of the supplier in a manner in which the payment should be made. Format payment program, the program, this program enables it enables the invoices, particularly, I mean, those kind of the layout of a particular payment document. So if you say, for example, right, how will be how it will be like your your format, your say for example you'll have ISO format or EFT or NACHA format. So based upon this format, actually this kind of program runs and builds the output in the particular designated format. It could be your ISO, wire, NACHA or EFT. It's all depends upon the business provided. Separate remittance program, definitely you'll have a remittance program where a separate remittance advice is going to be run over and send it over to the supplier. What is the difference in between entering an invoice in an invoice gateway and invoice workbench window? So, invoice workbench used for entering and maintaining more complex invoices for which you need to have require extensive online validation and online defaulting, where as invoices gateway used for your everyday entry of invoice record. Use this window for rapid high volume entry of standard and credit memo invoices that are not complex and do not require any kind of extensive online validation or defaulting of values during the entry. When you use the invoice gateway, you enter the invoice header and line information in the same window, and you can view only one record at a time. In the invoice workbench, you can enter invoice header information in the invoice window and related invoice distribution in the distribution window. You can view multiple invoices in the same time with the invoices window. In the invoices workbench, you can enter and apply prepayment. In the invoice gateway, we cannot enter prepayment, but we can apply those existing prepayments to the invoices. What are the tables involved in AP invoice interface? You'll have AP invoice interface, you'll have AP invoice interface lines interface. What is the proration of the invoice lines? When you check the prorate in the invoice line, it will be when you check the prorate in the invoice line, it will prorate the expenses and tax accordingly as per the proportion of the line amount of the invoice. Correct. So, what are the offset taxes? Where it is being used actually? So, offset taxes is nothing but offset tax codes are used to record self-access taxes on invoices while reducing or completely offsetting tax liability. Offset taxes have negative amount rates, so when you use them, you enter negative amount invoice tax distribution. It used in the European, you know, Union. If you are a member of the European Union, then you can report of this zero rated tax using the intra EU VAT audit trail report. Okay. What are the types of holds that are used to prevent the payment of the invoice? Basically, as we discussed, you'll have two types of hold: manual and system hold. Manual hold we can create and release manually whenever there is system hold is being created by the system and normal release by the system after the due rectification. So there are three types of hold we can use for the prevent used to prevent payment of an invoice. Invoice hold, you'll have then. We can manually apply one or more invoice hold reason approvals holds to an invoice using the invoice holds window on the invoice workbench. Schedule payment hold, we can hold payments on part of an invoice by placing one or more scheduled payments or hold the scheduled payment window of the invoice workbench. Then supplier hold, in the supplier side window, you can enable the hold all payments. You can hold unapproved invoices, the hold unmatched invoice option. We can also have the option of specifying the invoice amount, a limit for a supplier side also. What are the hold options at the supplier side? In the supplier side window, we can enable the hold all payments, hold unapproved invoice, hold unmatched invoice. We can have also option of the specific invoice line and amount. Okay, discuss this. Next, what are the ways in which invoice can be approved? I think by online by using invoice action window, or online by using the approve button in the invoices batches, or batch by submitting the payables approval program from the submit request window. Three way we can do so. What are the methods of taking discount in the payables? So there are two ways of taking discount in the payables. Enable the always take discount supplier option. Payable takes a discount regardless of the when you make the pay the particular invoice. Select discount for the paid rate basis for the supplier, and disable the pay only when there is a due checkbox for your payment batch. Payable takes a discount and pays the invoices within the discounted period. What are the levels? What are the matching approval levels? Match approval levels, if we use the Oracle Payables and Oracle Purchasing or another integrated purchasing product, we can perform online matching of the invoices and original purchase order or purchase order receipts. And matching of, ensure that this only pays within the pays for the goods and services we ordered, that our supplier do not overbill us. If we if we are billed for an item over the amount and quantity tolerance we define, then the payable approval program applies hold to the invoice and prevents payment until we release the hold. Perfect. So what are the payable open interface table? The payable open interface table stores invoice, informations, particularly the payable in open invoices program, builds the payables invoice based upon the invoice records in the payables open interface table. After the import program, I think, build the invoices. This can be viewed, modified, and approved in the invoice workbench. What are the invoice matching option? You'll have two-way, three-way, and a four-way. Two-way is basically, you match the invoices against the purchase order. How much of the quantity has been ordered against that. You can do so. Three ways, invoice, PO, and receipts. Four ways, invoice, receipt, PO, and inspection. What are the prepayment invoices and what are the types normal, of the prepayment invoices? So let's see that. The following are the two types of temporary and permanent. Temporary prepayments can be applied to invoices or expenses report you receive. Permanent prepayment can be, cannot be applied to the invoices. What are the purchase order matching database tables? You'll have PO headers, PO lines, PO line location, PO distributions, then PO distributions, then PO releases, then PO lookup codes. What are the prerequisites of, having, how you can enter the payments? So the invoices we paid must be approved, uncancelled, validated without any hold, must have the same currency as the payment. The bank account must have at least one payment document that being used for the recorded and combined disbursement purpose. Okay. India localization. So, how should I define my surcharge for a TDS tax? You need to enter the surcharge field of the tax definitions, extract, exact percentage that has to be applied to the invoice amount. For example, in a case where the TDS rate is 2% and the surcharge is 10% is applicable for this tax, you should specify 0.2%. Okay. Yeah. What should be the setup steps when I wish to implement the TDS features only? So we need to see the entire configuration of the TDS. we can briefly see here what are the steps that we can able to mention here. Basically, you have to define the TDS related information of the organization, define income tax authority, define TDS sections, then define the TDS tax codes, define the TDS year information, define the TDS details for the suppliers. What are the impact assigning of a default TDS tax name to the supplier? This would automate the TDS calculation for every invoices created for the supply side. This happens in spite of the fact that you have override delete the TDS tax ID before saving the tax distribution. Okay. How many types of TDS invoices are created? Multiple invoice distribution have the same TDS ID. Invoice created for the TDS authority will have one invoice, and the credit memo for the supplier will be consolidated for all the invoice distribution having the same TDS ID. Okay, got it. So, what are the prerequisites assigned of WCT type taxes and invoices? I think you can have more details whenever you implement the GST for the India. Okay, so this many interview questions we have seen so far today, and we'll see in the next sessions other modules question related information.